One of the things about, and it's only Patrick Stay that brought this out, because one of the things we talked about with Patrick Stay was that we can't claim to be making a film about being open and honest without being open and honest ourselves. So we've never tried to engage in any ploys. You know, we've occasionally repeated an answer because that's within the construct that we're discussing, but you can't claim to be open without being open in return. And I had never admitted to being so profoundly cancerously lonely before. And one of the major reasons I didn't is because I was fucking ashamed of it. And when you're going through loneliness, especially I was a teenager at the time, I'd never understood what lonely meant. I was living in a disused attic in an unfinished building at the time. And I remember I used to listen to the radio at the time. And the radio finished at 11 o'clock at night at that fucking stage. And I remember feeling something that I'd never felt before. And I couldn't quite put a name on it. And the feeling is like wet concrete in your stomach. And it's not fear. Because believe it or not, going toe to toe with somebody in a violent altercation might make you feel more alive than you felt in a long time. So not only were you not afraid of it, but you might have even invited it. But the thing that I felt was loneliness. And I didn't understand the word, or I didn't understand the feeling. Lonely was a word that you read in a poem or heard in a song. And then it took you a long, long time to realize, like somebody living in a state of total denial, that the cancer of loneliness was ripping you asunder. And that the things that you feared most were exacerbated on every level. And the things that you yearned for most, you were deeply embarrassed by, which was a simple smile or somebody returning a hello. So, to talk about loneliness is, I think, another huge taboo. Because if you talk about loneliness, the implication is you're not popular, you're not attractive, you're not worth spending time with, you're not interesting. The things that you feel are something to be slightly embarrassed by. And also I think people, because they're so afraid of loneliness, it becomes kind of contagious. It is like a contagion. It is like something that people are afraid of picking up off you. So they instinctively, subconsciously understand it and keep the fuck away from it as much as possible. So I remember hanging around St. Stephen's Green, and the places I used to go to, I'd sleep rough in different places, but the places I used to go to that gave me greatest solace were libraries, bookstores, and music stores, and Stephen's Green. And Stephen's Green was the one place where you allowed yourself a romantic aspiration. But the moment you sat down on a bench, you realized you were dead. Firstly, no woman or girl was going to look at you in any shape or form, because she could sense off you that you were something to be embarrassed by. And secondly, you were afraid that passing crowds would realize you'd been on that bench too long. So you'd move from bench to bench. Eventually you'd leave the park in shame and go to a bookstore, or go to a record store, or go to a library and spend time with Oscar Wilde, with Dostoevsky, with whomever that you could spend time with, that you suddenly were given an insight into that you never would have had if you had gone to college. And then you would eventually return to Stephen's Green at 5 o'clock when people had left, or sorry, when people had left work but were going through the park. And you watch all these people with their busy lives, and you'd be deeply, deeply yearning, not just sexual yearning, but much more than that. You'd be yearning for some kind of contact, and it would never happen, because people would sense off you that you were bogey, that you were not to be trusted. So then you go to Connolly Station. And the reason you go to Connolly Station is because I used to smoke a lot, but you would know that people light up the cigarette, take a last draft, stub it out, and then hop on the train. So it was the best place in Dublin to pick up cigarette butts. Pick up cigarette butts, get your Rizla paper and roll your butts at home alone, listening to Astral Weeks or listening to whatever you listen to, and reading the book that you had bought for 10p that day in the second-hand bookstore. And the more you would read, the more you would feel that magic is possible. And then you'd finish the book and close it, and then the loneliness would return deeper than ever. So loneliness is something that we don't discuss because we're ashamed of the fact that it might suggest that we are not worth being engaged with.
That was the thing I was trying to remember that you had said. It's just the thing that people think they're going to catch it off you. You know? And that's how you start to feel. That is how you start to feel at the time.
But the whole, I think myself and Patrick have talked about this many times, but the whole, if there is a function to film, you know, beyond fame and sex and money and all that nonsense, sometimes you hope that a film will make somebody feel that they're not alone. I know that's why I used to watch films. I used to rent films 5 a night. I would watch them all, back to back. I remember the greatest films to me were the films that made me feel less alone in the world. And if there is a function of Patrick's Day, it's simply to say that you're not alone. And we're not suggesting that we can do anything, we're not suggesting that we're going to make any changes to your life, but at least you might watch something in a dark room that makes you feel less alone. And at least you might look across at the woman or the man that you've seen and made eye contact with multiple times, but were too shy to talk to and say, finally, "Can I have a cup of coffee?" Or just simply hello. About 25 years ago, I called a helpline, and I won't name the helpline out of courtesy to the people who I'm sure do remarkable work there. But I was suicidal and I was attempting to commit suicide at the time. And in the hallway of the bedside I was living in was a coin box. And I put the last bit of money I had into the coin box in a state of profound desperation. And I called and I spoke to the individual who was on the line. And in a slightly, frankly, patronizing voice, they talked about what I need to do in order to protect myself from the inevitable desire to wipe oneself out. And as the conversation progressed, the beep beep of the coin necessity clicked in, and I had no money left. And I asked the individual on the phone, "I have no money left, could you call me back?" And her response was, "How long are you going to be?" And I swear to you, I burst out laughing. It was actually the beginning of turning everything around, because I thought, this is an organization that's been set up to help me and everybody like me in this moment of need. And yet, the greatest answer you can give at this moment in time is, how long are you going to be? Now, 20 years later, that organization, and I'd probably called them about 11:30 at night. 20 years later, that organization would not have had their phones manned or womaned or personed, or whatever you want to call it, at 11:30, because all their funding has been cut. Not only has nothing improved in 20 years or 25 years, they've had their funding cut and they've been treated like an aberration in society. So not only have we not progressed, we have done untold damage. And these regimes that are in place now claim, they pay lip service, but in actuality, people with mental health issues or people with loneliness or people with anything that is in the realm of the disenfranchised are regarded as a waste of society, and are regarded as people that need to be erased as quickly as possible. People on welfare, people with special needs, the elderly, gay. To be gay was very recently deemed to be an aberration worthy of a law making it illegal. That's the culture we're coming from. In actuality, people who need us most are deemed to be the biggest waste of time right now. And the punitive measures that have been put against them on every level is an indication of the society we're living in. And they say that you can only judge a society by how we treat our most vulnerable. How our vulnerable have been treated now is unprecedented in modern history. And it's capitalism and fascism dressed up as democracy. And it's sickening beyond measure. So not only has nothing changed, it's gotten much worse. And the only people who are going to change it are us. Through cinema, through art, through culture, through protest, through collective humanism, where we dispossess these scum who are in power and take power back to protect the vulnerable.